Let's now add in a progress bar so we can see how far along we are when we're completing a round of cards. So the first step is we'll create a new stateful widget, and we'll put this in a new Dart file, and this will be named progress bar. I'll type ST, and we can select STANIM, and this will create a new stateful widget ready to go to create animation. So here we already have an animation controller set up and dispose called on the instance of the controller. So that means we've saved a lot of time just by writing out that boiler code and import material. Okay, so here where we've initialized the animation controller, let's pass in a duration, and we'll put in 300 milliseconds and make that const because this is set in stone. Okay, coming down here to the container, let's replace that with a linear progress indicator. So this will build out our progress bar. So it's specially designed for purposes like this. And we can pass in a value. And this is a value between 0 and 1. So 0.5 will be 50% complete. Okay, so now that we have the shell created, let's place this on the page on the screen so we can see it being built out. So back in Flashcard's page, let's pass in this widget here. Progress bar. I'll put this behind card 2 and card 1, so card 2 and card 1 animate over the progress bar. Okay, we can see a progress bar, a very small skinny one, has appeared up the top. Let's move this to the bottom of the screen. So I'll pass in alignment and bottom center. All right, so now this is at the bottom, and let's also make that a bit larger. So to do that, we'll go back to the progress bar and we'll use the min height property, and let's set that height based on whatever size the device is. So we use media query of size, store that in a variable. So now we're basing it on whatever size the screen is. We'll set the padding proportional as well. And because we're getting the size from media query, we can't have that as a const. Okay, cool. I'm just going to click that so it's a bit clearer. And there we can see the card animated over the progress bar. So that's what we want. Okay, next step is let's round those corners so it sort of fits the whole feel of the app. Do that, wrap with widget, and we'll wrap with a clip rect. So therefore we can clip the child's corners. Border radius dot circular, and we'll pass in the circular border radius const we created earlier, so everything's set with the same consistent style. Cool, so we now have curved edges. Let's also update the color. So we can do that in our theme where we created our themes. So configs themes. We can use progress indicator theme and progress indicator theme data class. So let's set the color. We'll set that as red. And we'll set the background, the linear track color, to something a bit subtle like gray. That doesn't stand out. Okay, we have to do a hot restart to get that to feed through. All right, cool. So we now have the progress bar set up. Now we need to actually have it work. So what we need to know is the percentage. We need to have a percentage update dynamically about how far through or how many cards have been completed out of the total. So to do that, we'll go to the Flashcards notifier and we'll create another method and we'll name this calculate complete percent. And we'll create a variable which will work with this method. So of type double, we'll name this %complete. So %complete should be equal to obviously how many cards have been completed out of the total amount of cards for a given round. So we can go correct tally plus incorrect tally divided by card tally. So just use these variables that we've created up here. And then after we've worked that out, we should notify listeners. So we need to call this method. Let's call this where we update the card outcome. So calculate complete %. Let's update that name to completed % to make it just a little bit more clearer. And the next thing we should create is a method to reset the progress bar, because when we do a new round, we obviously want to reset that progress bar back to 0. So we'll name this reset progress bar. %complete goes back to 0 and notify listeners. Okay, so we have two methods that we can now use to update our progress bar widget. So let's go back to the progress bar widget. So to listen to Flashcard's notifier, I'll wrap padding with a selector. So this is similar to consumer, so it's from provider, but the difference is a selector will act like a filter. So in this case, we only care about one variable, which is that %complete variable we just set up. So therefore, it's much more efficient, so we won't have unnecessary builds. So we need to pass in Flashcard's notifier and also the type of the variable that we'll listen to, which is of type double. And then we'll have a selector property. So we have a context. I've just put an underscore there because we don't need to use that. And also, this is our provider, so Flashcard's notifier. I'll call that notifier. And we can write notifier and select the variable from Flashcard's notifier that we care about. So we care about %complete. Now we need to also add in a builder. So the middle parameter is what we care about. And I'll put double underscore for the last parameter. So now we have access to this variable. So this selector, similar as a consumer, but we're just listening to changes in this one variable, %complete. And next up, I'm going to open up this builder here. So convert this to a block body. So we can write in some code. And we want to create two variables, the start position and the end position. So where the animation starts from and where we animate to on the progress bar. So we'll create two variables. Let's create them up here. So both of type double, and we'll name the first one begin value. So nice and obvious. And both will be initialized at 0 and end value. All right, cool. So we have that set up, and we'll set the end value, which will be set to %complete. So when that updates, our end value will be now set to whatever value that is. And now we need to create an animation object. So we'll name this animation, and we'll set this to a tween of type double. So the begin value, we'll pass in our begin value variable and the end value and animate this. So we can pass in curved animation. So we can put in a curve, and let's pass in a curve. Ease in out circ. So now we've set the animation. We now need to actually have the linear progress bar animate. So let's wrap this in an animated builder. And we have an animation property. So let's pass in the controller. And we have a builder. So we'll replace the child with a builder. Now, instead of the value being hard-coded at 0.5, we can now use the animation object we set up and select the value property there. Okay, so we have our animated builder, which is going to rebuild the linear progress indicator and move it from position to position, we need to start the animation. So the final part we'll call controller.forward. And before we run forward, we should always make sure the controller is set back at the beginning because we'll be running this multiple times. And now, when we animate from say 0 to 0.25, the begin value, which started off at 0, should now be 0.25 because that's the starting position from when the progress bar next animates. So we need to write begin value is set to the end value. So that way we'll animate from the last position where the progress bar is, rather than always animating from the beginning. So let's do a hot restart and see how it goes. So we start off at 0. Cool, so we've done one card and we've completed. Now let's retest incorrect cards. Okay, so now we need to reset that. So let's go into Flashcard's notifier. So we need to reset the progress bar. So let's come down here where we generate all selected words. And we can select reset progress bar here. Okay, so let's run that again. Retest. All right, so that progress bar is back to 0. Now the progress bar did animate back to 0. I think it will look better if it just starts off back at 0. So we can add one final bit of code to fix that back in the progress bar. We can write here, if the end value is equal to 0, so we must be at the very beginning, then the begin value should also be set to 0, should have the value of 0. So now let's run that. Retest. Cool, we're back at 0. Let's go again. And perfect.